It's May 13th, 2026, and this is the live weekly update. But my update today is going to be a very special retelling of what happened last week. If you were paying attention to the update that I most recently gave, I've been on a journey over the past several weeks that has basically led to me trying to make contact with Mae Martin. Not in a weird, creepy way, but in like a philosopher with inspiration kind of way. And so since the end of April, I've been on my own personal journey, and into May, it led to me creating 3 pages of a sort of letter / request, invitation, proposal, philosophical project that I wanted to get to May. So I sent an email on May 1st. That was my deadline. But then they had a show in Denver on May 8th as like one of the last few shows of their tour, the Possum tour. And I was like, what if I could somehow get the paper copies to them? Because the paper copies are so much easier to read than like a digital version on the screen. It's just not the same. It's not the same feel. You don't have the same experience. Your brain doesn't work the same way when you look at them. So it was really important to me to try to figure out a way to get paper copies of these 3 pages to May on the 8th. Now, what I want to tell you is the story of how that might have happened. I can't be 100% sure, and I can't even be 100% sure that they, received them, though there's a pretty good chance. But I can't be confident, with certainty, that they've even read them yet. So, anyway, let me just start by saying this is not a story to try to, corner Mae Martin. That's not my thing. I've got a lot of sensitivity when it comes to parasocial relationships and how we engage in them respectfully, healthily, and well. But in terms of the process I've been in the past several weeks of just having a lot of personal work going on around vulnerability and pursuing my projects and kind of clarifying what it is that I want to do around my big philosophical commitments, and then just committing to doing this, and then going another step and being like, could I possibly get them to May? How would that be possible? I want to tell you the story of what happened. So this is going to be a very long, hyper detailed retelling of a literal series of many events, and I have playfully referred to this live update as the cusp of magic, because I feel like what played out last Friday, May 8th, to be able to potentially, very likely, end up being able to have the paper pages go from my possession to possibly Mae Martin's possession is just astounding. And so there's part of me that really just wants to capture the unfolding, because it was pretty miraculous. And I'm not trying to be really woo-woo, new agey, manifestation, magical thinking kind of thing. But it might sound that way. And so let me just set a little bit of context if you're curious about why all the details, why so much minutia. There's a reason for that. So one reason is largely that I literally had a conversation with my friends Friday night over dinner, which was before they went to the early show, May's early show at 7:30. I was going to the 10 o'clock show, or 8, I don't know, whatever, time is not super important. Anyway, they were going to the early show. I was going to the late show. We had dinner beforehand. And I'm going to jump around. This is not going to be a linear retelling because that just doesn't work for my brain. But there was this conversation that I want to recount, which was over dinner. I told them they knew that I wanted to get paper copies to May. In fact, I had even printed off an extra copy just in case and handed them to my best friend's wife. And she was like, okay, well, if I have an opportunity, then I'll slip them on over to May. Basically, it was like, we've got 2 shots here. However it shows up, take advantage of it. It doesn't have to come directly from my hands. So over dinner, I was telling them that like the way that my day had gone that day was very much the way that most of my days go, but just exceptionally pronounced open channels for intuition. This is the way that I try to live my life now, and I know that sounds like really, you could gauge it all you want, but I want to express the significance of that because over the past several of years, like honestly, I've been working on trying to be more grounded in receptivity, attunement, intuition, sort of your gut feeling or vibe checks, whatever you want to call it. And I have gotten so good at this that I just like don't question it any longer. It's really strange. It's not always like super explicit on the surface, but there's this deep like kind of wavy momentum or inertia or energy or whatever you want to call it. It sounds so silly. But I'm locked into it. So this is what I was telling my friends over dinner, and I was like, this sounds ridiculous, but like the day has been one where I just kind of literally go with the flow, which is not to be so passive as whatever happens, I'm just here for it. It's more active than that because it's more attuned than just floating on the lazy river. I'm sort of like paying attention to subtleties and then making micro decisions along the way based on the subtleties that I pick up. So whatever language you want to use for that, go for it. I'm going to call it magic. And I was just like, the more that I think about how all these things unfolded, the more like amazed I am. The other reason why I want to clarify this is that it could be real easy to slip into a mentality of like, everything happens for a reason, you see? And I have said before on these videos how I don't really like that framing for life. I'm not one to say everything happens for a reason because of the retrospective kind of like justification for literally just cause and effect. When it's done in that sort of lazy way of saying, well, you see, everything happens for a reason, I believe it's like this sort of justification to, I'm going to be blunt, I guess, to kind of like give up our own agency and responsibility. I'm very much a proponent for free will, using our will, directing our will with intentionality. I'm very much one for owning our responsibility to create the world we want to live in. I am one to say you should assume your role in becoming the person that we need. So there's like a lot of active agency and intentionality that is just sort of the cornerstone to the way that I think about life. So this everything happens for a reason kind of mentality, I think just like gives that up. And I don't like that. So what I'm going to say is not about everything happens for a reason. What instead I would like for you to hear is a sort of maybe like relationship to choice and possibility. And if we layer that in with the talk that I was using of language of call it intuition, call it vibes, call it the flow that you are aligned with, whatever it is, this is the energy of it, okay? So there are for sure a series of events, details, and just chance happenings that do create a causal story that leads me to be pleased, thinking that maybe there's a very good chance May Martin has paper copies of my pages in their hands. But honestly, so much of this is not something that you can just force, and that's another little like nugget. I was really, really clear with myself that like I didn't want to force this issue. I had an intention and I had a goal. I wanted May to get the paper copies of my pages. Yes, I emailed them to their agent, presumably, if the contact information is correct. But that wasn't my ultimate goal because I really wanted the paper, hard copy, tangible pages to be able to be like what May received. That was my goal. What happened to get there was not necessarily my forced control. A lot of things happened that like I couldn't dictate. So instead, this is the way that I like sort of move through my life, and opportunities, possibilities, chance, call it what you will, luck, good fortune, the great unfolding of life. But the way that I move through that is like I have my goal, I have the intention, and then I'm going to let it unfold. And I will stay vigilant and attentive to see what happens. I pay attention to sort of like little nudges and signs. And I, again, like I've said, over the past few years have gotten quite comfortable with like receiving those things. I know this sounds like I'm like a psychic or something. I don't know if that's the case, but or if I have like angels around me and spirit guides or something, the universe aligning and conspiring with me. Maybe all of the above, but the story that happened feels like so much of those little nudges. So I know I'm doing like a million context laying and over explaining the preamble here, but I do think that there's something helpful about this, because we could dig for a deeper kind of philosophical meaning of all of this, and I'm maybe like putting the cart before the horse. But ultimately, do I want to go so far as say there could be like a philosophy of life in here? Maybe, because we are talking about freedom, we are talking about choice, we are talking about action, we are talking about like the way that we move through the world. But I want there to be a sense of like possibility or more flexibility in our freedom, especially when things feel more repressive and more restricting on how we actually can move. So there's a lot to unpack in this. I'm going to try to pause it for a second. And instead, let me present a totally different philosophy of life, which is to think about life as an escape room. Now, I'm not just pandering to May here, because I also love escape rooms, but I think that there's a way of thinking about, like a helpful framing for how to think about what we could do when we're approaching life and life's challenges, or even life's great opportunities. There was a moment, maybe you know it because it happened to you too, when I read Tina Fey's book Bossy Pants and was just like, yay, so excited about the presentation of rules of improv as like kind of the rules for life. Now, if you know about improv scares me. Personally, I don't feel comfortable playing with improv and doing scenes. I respect everybody who does, but that's like so stressful for me. But there are certain basic like principles of improv that can be applied as just a general good approach to life. And one of the big ones is like yes and, to always build on the thing instead of saying no and shutting down the story that's unfolding or the scene that's being built. You say yes and, right? And then there's also the bit about like you're always listening. You listen to what somebody says so that you can be a good collaborative partner in the creation of the scene. And there's like no mistakes. So there's nothing that goes wrong. It's if you're saying yes and, then there's always an opportunity to build on whatever has been presented. So Bossy Pants, Tina Fey, improv as like giving the rules for life, beautiful framework. The other thing I would say is like sometimes it's helpful to think of life also as like an escape room. So if you're someone who enjoys puzzles or just sees that, maybe we could have our minds oriented in such a way that helps us have a different kind of attitude towards the challenges or the pickles that we might find ourselves in. I like the escape room model. What about an escape room? I know some people just like don't like the phrasing of escape room. Like the title alone sounds scary. They're like, I don't want to be locked in a place for an hour where I have to get out. Like that is some people's like deep phobia and a trigger. That's fine. But there is a way to engage in escape rooms that I think are applicable for life. And so some of the strategies for how to do well in an escape room are to keep a very flexible mind, to try everything. Whatever you see does not necessarily have to be what it appears. So when you're in an escape room, you're always looking for the key, or you're looking for a clue to the next puzzle that you're going to solve. And anything that you like, the best strategy is like be open to anything. That I'm like this slinky on my desk could be useful. You never know. And so instead of dismissing something or assuming something, it really creates this like practice in your mind to be open to the possibility that what you are looking at might actually be meaningful in a way that you're not anticipating or that you wouldn't expect. So be open to surprise. With that openness comes a willingness to try pretty much anything. You like look at it and check it out and see like maybe this isn't just a picture frame of me and my brother as babies, how cute. But maybe if like this back were to come off, there could be something in there. So there's like always more than what oh wait, what am I trying to say? There's always more than what meets the eye. And so you attempt anything. You try whatever is in front of you. You stay really open to the possibility that things could be surprising. And when you're with other people, you communicate. And you're always like describing what you're doing. So you don't go off and like do your own little thing, but the most successful ways to like get through an escape room is to join with others and to pay attention to what they're doing and to kind of work together. So you share information, you over communicate, and you kind of keep track of like what have we tried, what worked, and then but you stay open because if you're sort of gathering information all the time so that you can eventually be like, oh wait, I remember that thing. Maybe that's relevant now that we have new information. So there's kind of this always constant processing going on of being able to make the connections. The other thing about escape rooms is that they usually contain so much more dimensionality than is initially apparent. So it's not uncommon for you to go into a small enclosed space and you think, shit, we're going to be in this like 4x4 closet for an hour. This sounds horrible. But again, full of surprises, things unfold. And typically it's not unusual for an escape room to actually open up into a completely new space. And so what you thought you were going into is far bigger than your first impression. Anyway, I love that as a sort of framework for thinking about an escape room because it opens up the flexibility of mind, creative thinking, creative problem solving, staying really attentive and observant to the details without assuming you already know what it means, and then being able to make the connection. So there's like this give and take of responsiveness or of taking in information and not assuming that you can just dismiss it for, at surface, first impression. So, yeah. The context has been laid. The frameworks have been presented. I really want to say that because that is probably the best way for me to describe what happened and how it all unfolded. So, like I said, this is going to be a very highly overly nuanced and detailed retelling. I haven't written this out. I don't even have like a storyline plotted, which would maybe have been helpful. But I'm going to just give myself permission right now to let go of my hangups of being like a long-winded, windy, tangential storyteller. And I'm going to embrace all of that fully so that I don't have to censor or check myself. This may be messy. It may be convoluted, and that's okay. But where do we begin? Honestly, I had to pick a starting place for all of this. So I'm going to tell you how all of this even came about. I am not the world's biggest Mae Martin fan. That may seem like a strange place to begin because I've been so focused on like how do I get a hold of Mae, but I want to start there by saying that like this is not a parasocially motivated project. I don't have like preconceptions about who Mae is. What really planted the seed for this is a conversation with my best friend and her wife back in March. And my best friend's wife said, just kind of on her own accord out of the blue, she was like, you should meet Mae. Now I know who Mae is because I'm familiar with some of their work, and I appreciate comedy, so I had seen their special Sap like years ago. And I watched Feel Good years ago, so it wasn't like, I know who Mae is. It wasn't this like strange foreign suggestion. But I was like, yeah, that's a weird thing for you to say. Meet Mae? Why? That immediately it was like, this is a famous person and I'm just someone in Colorado. So I was like, don't you dare like put those kinds of like fantasies in my head that anything like that would even happen. How ridiculous. But then some things happened where I was like, you know what? Maybe I could at least go to May's show because I had seen the tour and that it was coming through Denver. They had tickets, my friend and her wife. So I was like, well, maybe I could go to the show just for fun. Like, why not? I do like comedy. I like May. It could be a good event. But I sat on those tickets for a while. The show, once I decided I was like, maybe I will get tickets, was sold out. But then they added a late show, the 10 o'clock one. And I thought, oh, well, there's a chance now for me to go if I want to. And I sat on that one again too until I decided like, no, maybe I should. Maybe this will just be nice. I'm doing this little stutter step because I want to emphasize that like even the choice to get the tickets to go to May felt like a 4-step process where I was like, yes, no, maybe no, to the point where I even had it like loaded on my screen to like choose the seat that I wanted to buy the ticket for. Here's what's important about that. I mean, everything is highly detailed, could be painful, but it's all significant. So eventually, April 8th did decide to get a ticket to the late show at 10 p.m. on May 8th. What I ended up doing after the second time I loaded the seat selection, I ended up finding a good seat very close to the front in the orchestra section that was one of those straggler seats. You know, I was just going by myself. I've often bought 2 tickets and thought, I'll bring somebody. And this one I was like, no, I'm just going to do this because I want to just like go and give myself a nice experience. So I was able to get a really amazing seat when there were not many left because the late show had already been announced. But because of that one single straggler seat, which venues typically do not like to have you leave, sometimes even like prevent you from being able to buy seats that leave a lone straggler seat. Well, I got one and it was like pretty close in one of the front sections, not the front, but like the next front section. And I didn't even really think much of it. It was like, cool. I got my one ticket. I'll be sitting around a bunch of people who presumably were more avid fans than me and got their tickets way early because this is a good spot. And then I just let that ride. So that was, again, the beginning of April 8th, when I bought that ticket. Didn't have anything in my mind other than, great, I'll go have a good time. And then my friends were like, maybe we can get dinner beforehand. And I said, yeah, that would be lovely. That's it. It wasn't until April 20th when I actually was like, oh, I should make a proposal to May. And that happened because of a walk that I did the weekend before. So we're talking April 17th, 18th, 19th, that like things started clicking. I'm going to save those details because like, just know it was like me channeling or I don't know, getting insight from the universe or whatever inspired it. It happened. So now I had the idea that I wanted to get I was like, could I possibly connect with May around a philosophical idea? This isn't just a meet May. No, it's like maybe May is actually the right person for the philosophy that I've been talking about doing, the epistemology of intimacy, my philosophical project. That's when I started to think about the proposal. This much you all know. Then let's fast forward. I'm working really hard on my pages for those weeks leading up to May 1st. I send the email to their agent on May 1st, and I'm thinking, okay, May 8th is the show. I would love to figure out a way to get the paper copies. How do I do that? That's a week for either to get a response or not get a response. To consider doing a social media campaign, I don't know. But in general, just like enough breathing room. And that's important, right? Because I'm talking about like the spaciousness that allows for the attunement or to receive the little nudges here and there. Well, I was talking to a lot of friends about all of this and people were supportive. They were from like before I even started making the pages. People were excited and probably a little bit like you sound quite delusional, but go ahead. Like little, I mean, sometimes it's like a little pat on the head. It feels like, yeah, good, go chase your dreams. Like this sounds a little outrageous. But most of my friends are kind enough to encourage and support. In fact, I just want to say this too, because I wasn't like a super May fan. I didn't know May beyond the like limited work that I had been, exposed to of their stuff. It was all my friends who were like, wait a minute. I know this and this and this and this and this about May, that they were the ones who were like, actually, they'd probably be into this because, and then they'd tell me these stories of like what May had shared on the Handsome podcast or things that had come up in their other appearances on shows or something else. So this like sense of, is May Martin the right person for a philosophical project on developing an epistemology of intimacy, really got like supplemented with confirmation based on the references from my friends who are more familiar. So there's that. Like, just know me, I'm still just like cruising, going along with whatever unfolds. But I did make the active step of sending the pages. Okay, now I'm going to skip to the Wednesday before their Friday show. This is an interesting little moment. I had kind of had it on my mind that maybe if I hadn't heard anything from May or their agent after sending an email, which I wasn't expecting to, it's a very fast turnaround when they're on tour. I did have the thought of maybe doing like a social media something to see if maybe I can get their attention. I guess I was aiming for like the optimistic chance that maybe there could be contact on the 8th, that Friday. But I didn't make any moves, and I was kind of like, maybe I'll just like let it lie and not force this at all. I ended up having a conversation with a person I do not know. We had like, I'm going to save you the details on this one too. A lot of funny, very strange things had happened in the months leading up to this coffee for me to meet a stranger. But the universe moves in mysterious ways. So it turns out this person and I, who do not know each other, had set up a coffee for Wednesday afternoon. And that was interesting. The only thing I knew was from their twin, who said like, oh yeah, she really likes to help people build things. And this twin, who I also did not really know, heard what I was up to at a silent disco. I mean, there's so many random things that made all this encounter happen. I'm like getting deep in the weeds of a side quest right now. I just want you to know, strangers everywhere. strangers everywhere. How do we meet each other? How do we share this information? But somehow they're part of this timeline. All of that lands me to have coffee with a twin, stranger twin. And she's like, what is keeping you up at night? I was like, well, honestly, trying to get these pages to May Martin. They didn't really know who May was at all. She also didn't know philosophy, like the way I do it at all. And I could tell we were like kind of coming from very different perspectives and sort of attitudes. But she apparently has made sort of like a business out of crashing corporate parties. And so when my friends think that I do strange, bold things that are to, shake up the norms of how we typically engage with each other, like I'm comfortable trying funny, weird ideas to connect, this person is like on a whole different league. And she was like, I think you should crash this show because that's what she's done. And she was like, this has been written up on major newspapers. Like I have now gotten sponsors to support my crashing of these events because it's great PR. So her idea, she's like, I can come out with so many ideas. Which ones do you want? If you want to say, this is how you get May's attention. And I was, I think, probably sitting there like a little shocked. Like, I don't feel comfortable with any of these. But one of her ideas was to call the venue and say, I would like to coordinate a special surprise proposal, like a marriage proposal at this event. And then she's like, but you fake it. And it's not really a marriage proposal. Instead, it's just a way for you to like get on stage or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm not going to lie either. That feels really bad. So the suggestions I got from people went as far as like something extreme like that to a very common recommendation, which was, well, you could also just like hang out back of the building where the tour bus is, like late at night after the show and hope you can catch them there. I didn't love that idea either because I'm really trying to not be a creep about this. And I know I'm not saying that people who do that are a creep. And I think that May is a person who like very much is like warm and engages with their fans. So that may have been a very reasonable possibility, but I was not like, it wasn't in my strategy to just like hang out. It's helpful to also know that like I did think about meet and greet tickets, but those were for sure sold out. So that would have been a reasonable and totally normal way to try to be like, here's a letter I wrote for you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for doing your work. But that was kind of like taken off the table. So no standard meet and greet. No, I'm not gonna call the venue and fake a proposal and do something outrageous like that. And I don't even really feel comfortable hanging out in the back of the building behind the tour bus, like catching them on after hours. It's been a long night. They'd have 2 shows. That's not my vibe. So, what I did do immediately after that coffee conversation was feel very good about a super light touch, reasonable thing, which was I took to social media and made a video that said, "Hey friends, I need your help. I'm working on a best worst idea, which is to contact May Martin. I want to get these paper pages to May. Anybody have an idea how to do that? I don't have meet and greet tickets. Help me out if you have any ideas." I put that on Instagram. I tagged May in it. Immediately it shows up on their profile as like a tagged reel. And I'm like, well, that was easy. Maybe they see it. Maybe they don't. They didn't respond to it. They didn't like it. But it was there. And I'm like, well, that felt like a big step. But I didn't do anything with it. I had friends who liked it, and some friends commented like, this makes so much sense. Like, I'm happy for that because I've been getting those messages where people are like, "Oh yeah, you and May, totally. That makes so much sense." There's like a lot of real overlap here. I keep getting those messages, by the way, from people, even like acquaintances who aren't just trying to like comfort me with reassurances. So anyway, I put up the video, Instagram it on a Wednesday. No bites, no notes, no messages, and no outreach really that gives any real fruitful pathway forward. So now it's Friday, and it's just time to go to Denver and see what happens. Here's a little bit about me. I am a person who feels anxious when rushed. I do not like not knowing where I am, really. And so I like to buffer a lot of extra time into my days just because sometimes like something doesn't feel right or maybe I miss something. So it's like a little bit of a like overcompensation for some personal anxieties. But because I could afford it to do it, I ended up being like, I'm going to go down to Denver very early and just be there so that I can have like an easy, low stress day leading up to dinner with my friends. Dinner with my friends was going to be at 5:15. My show that I'm going to is not until 10 p.m. So it's going to be a long day, but that's okay. I don't mind. I would rather not have to beat like rush hour traffic and be in the middle of that on I-25, which is a hellscape. So if I just leave early and spend the day, that'll be okay. So that's what I did. Friday, super chill, got in the car, easy drive. It took a little bit longer. Almost peed my pants because I needed to go to the bathroom. So I found a coffee shop. This is details that aren't maybe so relevant, but I was on like an edge of campus that I was like, I just need to find a coffee shop with a bathroom and a place where I can park. So thank goodness I landed in a spot where all of that was possible. What happens next is the decision-making process begins. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how far away? It was like a 25 or so minute walk from where I was to the venue. So I technically probably could have left my car where it was and then just like hiked because I don't mind walking. But I thought, well, no, maybe it would be better to try to move my car to another place that's a little bit closer to the venue in the neighborhoods. So I now am doing this like in my car wayfinding. And I parked over in a neighborhood which is like 5 blocks away from the venue because they've got like real strict parking limitations over there, which makes sense. They have a lot of shows and performances and stuff. So the people with the big houses are like, we don't want street parking of strangers crowding out our neighborhood. So they have instituted some time limits. Okay, fine. I just went a little bit beyond that where there was not going to be a time limit. And then I started walking on to campus. I thought I have time before dinner, so I'm just going to like sit somewhere and read a book. I had just barely started reading. I'm going to show you this book, which one of my very good friends, who I've been friends with for now like 2 decades, he sent this to me and was like, I just barely started reading this. I'm going to send it to you immediately. So I just started reading it and was like, I can totally see why he sent this. This is about a young woman who is a philosophy grad student working on her dissertation, talking about like sex and intimacy and privacy and public life, and coming out of an abusive relationship, has a best friend, philosophy department drama, so much struggle. And I was like, oh, I can see why he sent this to me. So I'm into it. And I was like, this will be lovely. It's a beautiful day. I'll just be on campus somewhere and I'll just be reading this book in the meantime, like before dinner and before, in between things. That's fine. So I'm going to walk to campus, find a place to read my book. And then I think to myself, it'd probably be helpful to know exactly like where the building is where the show is, just for later so that we don't have to rush and I've got free time. So I start walking around and I instead of finding a shady table somewhere on campus, I find the Newman Center on DU's campus, which is where the show is. And I was like, oh, there it is. And there's May's tour bus. Now, nightmare situation, because what I don't want to come off as is a stalker. Like, I do not want to come off as the creep who is like trying to hound down a tour bus. That was not my intention. I was just trying to alleviate my anxieties for knowing where we're going after dinner in case there's a rush. So I just coolly, casually walk by like I'm not, no big deal. Not gonna make a big scene about this tour bus. I'm just trying to find my way. So I ended up walking a little bit further and found that actually right there's plenty of parking that's like free, untimed residential parking. And now I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's actually really convenient, because if I'm going to be at the late show at 10, I would rather not have to walk like another extra half a mile to get to my car at like midnight. So maybe if the timing works, and it did, I will hoof it back to my car, get back here, repark it, and then I'll go meet my friends. So this is what I did. If you're tracking, this is one of those little decisions, right? Like I've made numerous already of like how to move my car, where I'm going to be located. All of this will become relevant eventually. I'm not just inundating you with these mindless details for the sake of inundating you with mindless details. So I go back, hoof it back to my car, repark it, and now I'm walking across campus. I'm thinking I'm going to have to like be there. Maybe I'll have 10 or so minutes now before dinner instead of like the 30 that I anticipated. Turns out, as I'm walking across campus, comfortably with a car parked nearby the venue, I get texts from my friends that are like, it's going to be a little bit later. So now my reading window has opened up again. And I'm like, that's cool. I'll head that way, close to the restaurant. I'll just be right across the street, as close as I can get. So whenever they're ready, I'll be ready. And in the meantime, I'll just find a nice, cozy, comfortable little spot to read this book. So as I'm walking to try to find a nice, suitable reading spot for a late afternoon, I cut onto this like little walkway onto DU's campus. I see a bench. I'm like, that could be a good bench, but maybe not exactly where I want, because it's like a very busy thoroughfare. But right next to the bench, I look down and there are 2 pennies on the sidewalk. And I was like, oh, lucky pennies, that's cute. And I kind of was like, maybe I'll just keep walking. And then I thought of my grandma, which my mom has been telling me about my grandma. This is a little bit of a detail, but she's a lovely human and one of my favorite people, one of the most important people in my life, and she's not doing well right now. So anyway, the most recent update I had heard from my mom was that grandma was really struggling mobility-wise. Things are not great. This is, I'm not going to go into that situation, but she said, but your grandma, being who she is, even when she can't move, and when she's got broken hips and bones and all this kind of stuff, I took her outside to get some sun in the big wheelchair, and she still leaned over in this chair to pick up something that she saw on the sidewalk. So this is my grandma, who is always looking up at the clouds or always looking down, collecting rocks or like little trinkets that she finds, and I have inherited that tendency. So not only is that just sort of like in my way of being now, but I thought of her specifically and I was like, my grandmother would never walk past a lucky penny and not pick it up. So I decided to pick up one, and I thought maybe I'll just leave another one for somebody else, to not be greedy or hoard. And as I'm getting ready to leave one abandoned lucky penny for a fortunate stranger behind me, I go, wait a minute, or maybe there's two for a reason, and one for me, maybe one for May. Let's see. So I go back and I pick up both pennies, put them in my pocket, and sit on a bench and start reading this book. Then it's dinner time. So I meet my friends for dinner, pass on the one copy of paper copies to my friend's wife, and we're just talking about like, well, what's going on? I'm telling them about how I'm just like, you know, like rolling through the day, feeling the vibes, just going with whatever happens. That's how my day had been. We had a lovely little dinner, and then we walk to the venue so that they can make it for the early show. Nothing really too elaborate here. And in the meantime, I was like, what do I do now? I could sit and read. So I did. And then it got a little bit cold. I'm like, oh, maybe I could, now that my car is so close by, I could go grab my coat, or I could, just like situate myself. I had another group of people who I was thinking of possibly meeting up with. And so I'm like, I could text them and see if we're ready to meet up too. In the meantime, I decided to go to my car because it's so conveniently nearby. I could. So I walked to my car, get my coat, and then I just ended up like sitting there. It's one of those weird moments, when you're like, what is happening? I don't know. How do you make gut decisions? How do you listen to your body? I think that this is a practice, beside interrupting myself, timeout, scene change. There's a note here about how to actually like tap in to whatever you want to call this, the magic I'm referring to. Maybe it's your intuition, maybe it's receiving certain nudges, but the conditions are better for that when you give yourself space to actually like receive something. And part of that is not just like sitting with an openness to it, but really checking in with like, how do you feel? What is the nudge in your stomach, or what is really pulling you? So in this particular situation, imagine me, I'm sitting in my car. Like, am I really just going to sit in my car here now? It rained a little bit, so that was kind of convenient. To just like chill, recline, enjoy the brief drizzle. But the real choice that I made was like, if I wanted to meet this other group of friends. They said they would be somewhere near at 8:30. I'm doing the timeline because at 9 o'clock is when the doors open for the late show. 9:30, I think, was when we could actually like go sit down, but the venue would open at 9. So I was like, I could go and meet those friends, but I don't really want to be rushed like with a group dynamic. I'm a solo traveler these days, so that I can just like come and go as I please. And I thought about it. I was like, I would rather not be kind of pushing it, of saying hi to a group of people, joining some folks I don't know who are with my friends, and then feeling awkward about being like, I'm going to go get to the venue now. See you when you're there. So I texted and I was like, I'm just going to skip on that so that I just don't have to rush. And I just decided to stay in the car. And with that car sit, that was when I was like, it's time for another decision. I had my paper copy of these 3 pages, and I brought them in a white envelope. I'm going to say, I don't know, half the size of these. So not a tiny business one, but like half a manila folder envelope. And I didn't seal it. I hadn't had it sealed because I was like, well, just in case, I'll put it in an envelope. But in the car, I had the thought where I thought, actually, my intention is to somehow get these pages to May. And I was like, am I going to be like so conscientious? Be like, but what if I don't meet May and I seal this envelope? Then I'll have wasted an envelope. I was like, don't worry about that. My intention is to get these pages to May. So I am going to sign, seal, deliver this envelope. With that conscious choice in my car, I strip off the sticky peel and, stroke of inspiration, genius, I don't know, take 1 penny out of my pocket and drop it into the envelope, fold, seal, done, write May on it. Now I have the intention set. I still don't know exactly how that might work. But, little steps along the way. In the meantime, now it's like 8:30 or so. Since I'm not meeting other friends, I get a text from my best friend's wife, the one with the other copies. And she's like, "You're gonna love this." And I'm thinking, "Oh, of course, we know. I'm so excited. I'm sure the show is gonna be great." But I'm thinking the show is over. So I was like, "I'll come and like meet you all outside so I can get one more goodbye before I go to the late show." I get out of my car, walk over, and I'm like, "I'm going to be on this side of the building." And she goes, "Oh no, it's just intermission." And I thought, "Oh, okay. I didn't know there was going to be an intermission. There's not usually an intermission in shows like this, but that's fine." So I hang out for a little bit and go, "Well, now what do I do?" I mean, my car's not so far away, but I was like, well, I could just hang out. So that's what I decided to do. I had my book with me. I had my bag with the letter in the envelope. I have a coat. I'm comfortable. I've got what I need. So I ended up going around the building and finding a well-lit place, like an how do you describe this? Like, I don't know, there's like a side exit to the building, like basement level. It's well lit. There aren't, well lit benches anywhere nearby that I can see, but there is like a windowsill down there. So I was like, that's a comfortable place for me to just stoop and read for a few more minutes in bright light. Sure, why not? So that's what I did. I'm just loitering around with a book and a coat and a bag at like until almost 9 p.m. when I'm going to intercept my friends as they exit the show, and we say, "Hello, goodbye, love you so much, be safe, see you soon." As I'm sitting there reading this book, everything's fine. It's 9 o'clock. My doors are going to start opening. I assume people are going to start leaving from the first show. So I pack up, and as I'm packing up, there's this woman in a green dress, flowing curly red hair, dressed to the nines. You know she's ready to impress. And she is coming up exasperated, energetic. We make eye contact and smile. And I would, we're moving very differently these days. Me, slow as drying glue. She is rushing to be somewhere important. Turns out, as we meet each other with a friendly glance and eye contact and a hello, we end up also going into the building at the same time. At this door, it's like not a front door, but there's like an elevator like immediately right there. And she, as we walk in basically together, she asks the people in the elevator, she goes, "Is this how you get to VIP?" And I was like, "Oh, the VIP meet and greet, the one that I don't have tickets to? If the answer is yes, I could so easily right now just be like, 'Me too,' and go slink on into that elevator and find my way. I don't know, figure it out, pretend like I'm Ethan Hunt on a mission." But I was like, no, I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to try to like fake or lie my way into this. But I did think it was kind of interesting. Like, okay, I know what's happening. She is rushing to go to the VIP meet and greet to obviously meet May in her beautiful green dress. Me, I'm like, I guess I'm just going to wait. So I go into the general lobby area, find another little place to stoop and sit and just be patient. Don't do much. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not reading any longer. And just a few minutes later, guess who shows up? Woman in the green dress with the brilliant red hair. She's at the bar and she is still catching her breath. She's been running for a while. She sees me, recognizes me, and then she goes, "Oh, I found it." And I'm like, I'm glad. She gets her drink and asks the bartender at the moment, she's like, "Are there restrooms nearby?" And the person goes, "Yeah, there's two. There's one over there and one right here, both sides." And she goes, "Okay, great, thanks." Takes her drink, swishes off like a beautiful mystery. And then I think, oh, okay, that's helpful information for me. Might as well use it. So I go to the bathroom closest to me, just roll my way in, and I forgot to mention something in the meantime. This is the nonlinear, right? In my waiting, when I did intercept my best friend and her wife from their show, we caught each other in the lobby. It's just like everybody was like mixing like this interchange. And they go, "Oh my God, you're going to love this show. Everything about it is great." But my best friend's wife goes, "And you know what? I think I'm going to give you these paper copies back, the second copy of the pages." She goes, at some point in the show, May is pulling questions from buckets. So there's like a bucket on the front of the stage. And maybe you could just like slip it into the bucket. I feel like you have a better chance with these 2 copies to like get it to May one way or another. Whatever that bucket is, I don't know. You could slip up there and just drop it in wherever. We don't know exactly about the bucket. Like, or, just see what happens. But there, maybe even afterwards, my friend was like, May kind of hangs out and talks to people. So there's a really good chance that you could just like play it cool. But here, 2 copies for you so that you have them. Okay. We say, great, great, great. Love you. See you soon. Get home safe. Goodbye. Now, this is when I'm like, now I will go to this like nearby restroom. I roll into the bathroom. As I walk out, behind the pillar, which is like what I meet upon exit, there is a little bucket. And I go, oh my God, that's the bucket. That must be the bucket that my friend was talking about. And it says questions for May with little slips of paper and pen. And presumably you can just drop in a question for May. So I pull out the second copy, the extra copy of pages, drop it into the bucket. And I know that is a misuse of that bucket. That might be the most I've pushed right now, like fudging with the expectations of appropriate behavior, because I want to respect the bucket for what it really is. It's a question for me, not a mailbox. So I decide in good faith to also, I'll ask a question. So I take a little piece of paper, I write my question, and I drop that in too. So now, who knows what happens to this bucket, but at least 1 copy of the pages in the bucket, as is my question. Now I'm waiting again. And as I'm waiting, just going with the vibes, I am looking down and suddenly I look up and people go, oh, Cori. Who are these people? These are 2 people from Fort Collins, where I live. And one of them I just recently met. She approached me at a coffee shop, was like, I'm following you. And then we've seen each other a couple of times. So it was like, oh, what do you know? Surprised seeing you here again. And the person who was with them, sorry, I think I used the wrong pronouns, with them is someone who I also know, who's in some of my little like community learning spaces. They had seen, second person, had seen my post on Instagram. Actually, I had a number of people reach out who were like, oh, you're going to the Late Show? Me too. Maybe I'll see you there. So this person, night of, goes, you're going to the Late Show? I just got asked to go, invited by a friend, so I'll be there too. These are the people who appear right in front of me as we're waiting to get into the seats. This is significant because if it had not been the person who was last minute invited by the other person who had 2 tickets instead of buying a straggler seat, like my strategy, they had an extra ticket. The person I know last minute gets invited to be their +1. We're like, oh, how funny that we're seeing each other. Where are you sitting? We compare notes. They are literally the row in front of me. I am looking at the back of their heads. I'm like, that's weird. What a coincidence. So we're waiting to basically go get seated together early as soon as they allow us to go. So we're going to have a substantial amount of time, like at least 20 minutes before the show starts. So we go find our seats, which are truly great. I'm looking at the back of their heads, chatting, and we're having a good time. So much so that because I know this person who was the +1 sitting right in front of me, we're talking so much that now the person right next to them, who ended up being a solo person, they got there earlier before we did. They're just, forced to overhear our banter and chatter. So I was trying to be, chummy. And I was like, by the way, I know these people. I'm not just like annoying them from behind them. I'm like, that's okay. But now we start talking. So the conversation shifted from me being like, hey, friend, how funny that we're both here, rather unexpectedly, to now I'm talking to the stranger who's right in front of me, right next to them. We're chatting, having a good time. And then it's almost showtime. Now, because I know that there's an intermission, I said to this person, hey, those 2 seats that are next to you that presumably have not been filled yet, why? great seats. They're like the front row of this section. I was like, if those two seats stay open at intermission, could I come sit next to you? And she was like, yeah, totally. So I know there's an intermission. Fortuitous that the two people next to this one person apparently did not make it to the show. Hope they're okay. Weird. Are you catching this? Are you catching this? There were open seats in the front row. Next to a very friendly stranger who I only started talking to because a friend that I knew was brought in as a +1 last minute and happened to be sitting at the row right in front of me. Okay. So the show begins. May does the set. It's great. Haha. Everybody loves it. So fun. So fun. So good. Now it's intermission. And I go, hey, new buddy, can I come up there? And they're like, yep, you sure can. So I move my body to the front row next to stranger, new friend. And we're chatting. They know I've got this whole project of like, oh, you see, I've been thinking about how to get pages someday. I'm trying to blah, 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 blah. Everybody's thinking about it. It's so funny. Like, this is the story I've been telling pretty much anybody who will listen to me. But intermission goes by. We were chatting so much that then they go, oh gosh, I should probably have tried to use the bathroom. I wonder how bad the lines are. And I was like, oh, I don't know. That's a tough call. At this moment, as intermission is apparently rounding out, some people are showing up who seem to be affiliated with the event, like working the space. And I was like, well, this person is standing right next to me right now. Would you like me to ask them if there's a bathroom? And they're like, I don't think they work here. And I was like, I've seen them doing something around the stage, so like maybe. And I was like, do you want me to ask if there's a bathroom that they know about? We have our own little side chat that goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And she finally was like, okay, yeah, go ahead and ask. So if this person did not need to use the bathroom and wonder about where a line was because intermission's almost over, I would not have done what happens next. But I did. And I said, excuse me, person who is now standing right next to me, since we're in the front row of this section. Are you affiliated with all of this? And they were like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. Any chance you know of a secret bathroom that has a lesser line? I don't know why I talk like that. And they go, oh no, I don't work with the venue. And then I go, oh wait, does that mean you're with May? And they said yes. Half a beat. And I go, I have a letter that I would like to, and they go, I can get it to them. So thank goodness, signed, sealed, ready to be delivered. I whip this envelope out with no hesitation. And their face, as soon as I hand it to them, they go, like, I don't know if they were shocked at my speed or shocked at the size of the envelope. But that person, within seconds now, lights go down, intermission is over. They have my envelope in hand and a camcorder. Because apparently they're with the tour, yes. And they are going to be recording what happens immediately after intermission, which is the improv time of the show. So me, I am beside myself and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that, like, maybe that's going to be how the pages get to May. I just gave this envelope to someone and I'm like freaking out, like truly freaking out, grabbing strangers, reaching over to my friend being like, can you believe it? It's happening. And then if I wasn't already out of my mind enough, the first thing that happens once they go into the improv scene, Mae Martin brings out Lisa Gilroy and they pull from the bucket a question. Let me tell you that the way the show actually started was with this bucket too. And Mae was pulling out questions and then answering them. It was like questions for Mae. Someone was like, you know, do you wet your toothbrush after you put toothpaste on it? And that's an interesting question, I guess. So I thought it was the sort of like, ask me anything, and these are questions, Mae will respond to them. What I did not anticipate was that the questions were actually going to be questions generated from the audience to shape the improv scenes that would happen next. So I'm freaking out. Envelope delivered. Intermission is over. Mae, Lisa Gilroy come out to do their improv together. Bucket is present. Question is drawn. And Mae reads out the question, which is, how many philosophers are you friends with? Which, yeah, was my question. Duh. And so I'm like, oh no. I did not think it was going to be an improv question. What a terrible prompt. So I'm pretty much blacked out right now. I'm like sinking from my chair, trying to suppress squeals and screams of disbelief, and also like great remorse, because what I did not think it was going to be an improv question. I think that May and Lisa ended up doing this improv scene about a philosopher. I don't know. It basically took me like 10 solid minutes to like calm myself down enough to be present to what was happening. But the important thing of this is that while the scene of them talking about being friends with a philosopher in an improv situation was being recorded on a handheld camcorder, my pages were nestled right next to that camera. That person leaves eventually. I'm still beside myself. And the whole thing is like presumably wrapping up. I think that honestly, I think that's really mostly where it ends. What happens after that is that the show is phenomenal. I try to like sit with myself and have some moments of reflection, get my nervous system semi-regulated again to be able to like be present and enjoy the last bit of the show when May is doing music, and then leave feeling so accomplished, so much in disbelief that all these little things happened. I I'll wrap this up by saying we walked out. I'm like, stunned. Run into people, more people, did not anticipate seeing, and end up just like closing out the night. I walked to my car, talked with a new friend for a little bit, and then I'm like, wow, it's after midnight. I think it's time we go. So this is the funny thing. Once we say goodbye, she's gonna call an Uber. I'm gonna head, the hour 15 minutes back up to Fort Collins. I have to. This is the way out from where I'm going. Drive behind the venue, and there's the tour bus again. And at that particular moment, May was leaving, saying thank you to the people who were waiting by the tour bus. Good night, and starts going up the bus. And I'm like, oh, wow, there were people there. I could have been that person. I could have been the one to be like, ha, gotcha, ambush. Here's an envelope with a letter. But I didn't. And instead, I was just like, there they go. And as I keep driving, new friend is walking. And I roll down my window and scream at them, like, did you just see May? And they said, yes, but I didn't have your number. I didn't know how to tell you. And I was like, wild, a narrow miss. So my friend got to say hello as they walked by. I drive by window down, just screaming and shouting out the car. And then that was it. So I didn't actually meet May. I did not stalk them. I did not loiter or hang out by the tour bus. I did not sneak my way into VIP. And but that lady in the green dress, she came back again. At this night, the end of the night, right? She was, I think, there with the crew at the tour bus. Man, she was aggressive. She had a tenacity that I did not. She was there doing that as May was going up on the bus too. That woman was trying to get it in. Here's why that's relevant for me too, because I did not want to be that person. I didn't want to push myself onto anybody. I didn't want to force my way into a sort of interaction. And honestly, I don't know, like, I'm the kind of person where if I had to do a meet and greet with people who had that level of fanatic energy, I would be drained and really probably exhausted, if not borderline uncomfortable. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put that on May. I just really wanted to deliver my pages because it really actually is like a philosophical project that I'm hoping to do. And even after seeing their show again, how they showed up, the things that they said and what they shared, I feel very much convinced and excited about the possibility that they could read the pages, because there is really tremendous alignment in the ways that we, I think and feel about the world, about politics. So I left feeling more excited and more hopeful that maybe, just maybe, if they read the pages, maybe, just maybe, they might be curious enough to possibly respond. What happens now? I'm done. Like I'm not I've that was a lot. That was a lot that was out of my control, but also not my like I'm not going to force this anymore. I might make a video of this, share it on Instagram and tag May just so they know if they want to hear the story of the magic that unfolded, then they could. But I'm not going to reach out anymore and just hope that maybe, you know, it'll be something May would like to do. And if not, that's fine too. I'm just like ecstatic that this whole thing happened and truly was like so much in disbelief about all these little bits that unfolded. The other thing I will say is that like when I talked about the pennies, the two people when we were waiting to go get seated, one person was like, "Did you look at the dates?" And I was like, "No, I didn't. I just put them in my pocket." And then I told my mom this story like the next day. I was like, "Oh, maybe the pages got to May." And I told her about the pennies, and she said, "Did you check the dates?" And he said, "No, what is it about the dates?" I'm like, because pennies are no longer being made? Is there some sort of like value here if they're, you know, pure copper? I don't know. And she said, "No, I think it's just like if it's a meaningful date, like that could be significant to you." And I thought, well, let's look. So when I did go look at the penny that I kept for myself, the date on it, out of all the years that I would say are relevant years in my life, aside from like the obvious one, like the year of your birth, there's one year that I am very quirky about. It's a strange, very, 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 very intimately known fact about me, which I'm almost not going to share because it's like, if you know me, then you know. But if you don't, I have a very strong opinion about one year in particular that I describe as like the best year of not just like American culture, but also it's like the highlight year of my life. Um, and that was the year on my penny. So I thought, well, damn. Out of all the years it could have been, you know, even if it was like, that's the year I graduated high school, I wouldn't have been that impressed. Like, coincidence. But this year is like, if there's one year, it was that year. So here's what I'm going to put out there. I don't know what the other date on the penny was because I wasn't looking at the details on the pennies, but wouldn't it be so fun if maybe May opened up an envelope, got these 3 pages, looked at them and thought, who does this? And then found this loose singular penny floating around in an envelope with no commentary. That was a last minute decision. I did not say, "P.S. this is a lucky penny I found." It was just floating in there. What if the penny that was in their envelope ended up having a significant date? That to me, if that ever happens, if that's ever information that I am able to come in contact with, if that's the way that like May and I could possibly connect, I'd be like, what was on the penny? Was it significant for you? Then I'd be a believer. I'd be a believer in pretty much anything after that. So that's my last like cast. I'll throw it out there to see if anything comes back. Almost like an escape room, like the code would be like, what was the date on your penny? Then we'll know. May found the pages, read them, and even paid attention to the date more than I did initially. Okay, so again, now what happens? I am so pleased that the details of all these little things, if you were tracking that, I mean, like subtle decisions, subtle chances, really just going with like the gut. I can't believe it happened. I did the most I possibly could without being a creep, without being overly pushy, without breaking rules, and without being deceptive. So I feel really good about that. As long as I can move in alignment and integrity, great. And with a true, sincere, genuine request to the philosophical project. I want to talk a little bit about that because while I do really love the idea of possibly connecting with May, also if they contact me, you won't hear about it. I will keep that so secret unless and until it is time to announce a project or something came of it. But like, this is the last you're probably going to hear about this. But the project is like, I'm looking, what I did not do in this page, the 3rd page is where I say like, oh, here's the philosophical project. My pitch is very vague. I just said I want to do some metaphilosophical performance art. And I left it intentionally open-ended. I asked specifically for a phone call, a follow-up conversation, but I didn't say, this is what the project is and this is what it would look like. Because part of what I imagine is that I want to make something with people. So I don't want to be so heavy-handed or directive and say, here's A through Z, the structure and the format of the project, which is, I don't know, probably more typical for an actual proposal, so people can wrap their minds around, like, what are you proposing? But I think that I said this a little bit last week, like, I really believe in the opportunity to share more of, like, the truly transformative quality of philosophy in this particular moment in time. I've already been talking for an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm not going to just keep belaboring this, but I am sitting now of like, wow, I can't believe May 8th happened. Pages presumably delivered. Maybe they'll read them. I know they get just swamped with, like, so many gifts and trinkets and things from their fans on this tour. So let's hope that one day, if it hasn't already happened, they'll open up that envelope, find that penny, look at the date, feel like a synchronicity struck them out of nowhere, and then be so inspired to reach out that they'll send me a message and we'll have a phone call. If that doesn't happen, then this part of my project is done. And that's fine, because it allowed me the space and the opportunity to really imagine what I want to do. And what I want to do is the same regardless of whether or not it's May or somebody else. I'm really committed and clear on my philosophical project, which is to, in one way, revisit the idea of my dissertation, the first dissertation idea I had 15 years ago, and combine that with everything that I've learned and created and moved into in the past several years, which is the epistemology of intimacy. And I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. I'm still kind of sitting with the details, spaciousness. Let there be room for surprise. What I did do is finally start reviewing the notes from this folder, which has the drafts of my first dissertation idea. And there's so much going on. I continued looking at these extra pages of notes that I found, and I read the introductory chapter that I wrote. So this is from 2011, called Reading as Resistance, a Feminist Account of Affect in Philosophical Texts. As I was going through the introduction, I guess this was probably my dissertation prospectus. That's more likely what this was. Because I said, like, this dissertation, I'm proposing what my dissertation would do, was going to engage specifically with affect and embodiment from a feminist perspective on Nietzsche's work related to physiology and philosophy, to argue that reading and writing philosophy can be pursued as an affective practice that provides a therapeutic mode of resistance to oppression. I wouldn't use exactly that language now, but as I was reading through the prospectus, I was like, there's a lot here that might be interesting to revisit. And in a prospectus, you have to sort of build the case. So there's a lot of situating of mind-body dualism and emotion and reason and Western patriarchal masculinist notions of, like, what counts as knowledge. And then there's the oppressive systems and the ways that affects our bodies and the ways that we feel physiologically, and it's also, like, our emotional constitutions. So there was a lot of ground laying in the prospectus that I read that yesterday and thought, that's kind of exciting. So now that my pages have been hopefully delivered to May, I'm stepping into the next phase of the project, which is to really get clear on what I do with this, since I've committed the next 5 or 6 months to just this. So I'm thinking of what I hope becomes clearer as I channel and receive nudges from the magic of the universe. I hope that I will find the format and the structure and even the collaborators to be able to maybe build out the philosophy as I wanted to do 15 years ago, kind of the core argument, and do it in a way that is situated with an epistemology of intimacy, because our times now are very different than what I was even processing in 2011 in terms of the political landscape. So that's what I'm putting out now. How I hope that happens. I also just sent out invitations to my birthday party, which in the pages I did invite May to. So that I'll show you this. I'm calling my birthday party the Gay Gadfly. It's happening in June. And I said, P.S. You're invited. That may seem weird, but no weirder than what I've already done in this situation. So anyway, I'm going to let that sit. All I really wanted to do was share the magic of this unfolding of how it went from like a ridiculous idea sending something to May, which I was shocked when I even sent the email, and then to have that idea evolve into like, I really want to get these paper pages to them, to then presumably have it happen in a way that was like, I don't know, some kind of magic inspiration. And all of that is just to say, now what happens is this new philosophical project. Not new, it's actually old. A revisitation of an old philosophical project. P.S. I finished this book last night. I'm going to be having dinner with my friend who gave it to me, the friend who has known me for 20 years throughout all of this philosophy. And so, like, you know how I've been, like, weaving weird timelines lately of, like, what happened in 2020? And this is a revisit to 2021 with the Oprah magazine. And then now I'm jumping back to, like, 2010, 2011 with the dissertation that I'm finding again. Well, this is going back now a full 20 years to truly the beginning of a friendship with someone who was the person I did my first dip into queer theory with back in 2006. So we're going to have dinner tonight and we're going to talk about this book and we're going to talk about the philosophy and I'm going to tell him this story again. So, okay, thanks for thanks for being on the ride. Life is an escape room if you want to be open to the surprises and be creative and flexible in your thinking of what is around you. Just stay attuned and maybe you'll stumble upon a bucket that you can ask it a question or submit a question and somebody will show up right there. Baby, that's the other thing. Be prepared. Be ready. That signed, sealed, delivered, I think matters. So thanks to Lucky Pennies. Thanks to all my friends who supported me on this idea. And thanks for being here for the magic. We'll see what happens. Hopefully good stuff comes of it. And if not, it's already been beautiful. Thank you. Be well. I'll see you next week.